Yes. All right. I am sending Erin an invite to join this broadcast with me. All right. It says that she's being added.
All right,
So this
great.
is your
I'm here.
yes. Yahoo! Sorry about all that.
That's
As
okay.
we talked about, I thought I had troubleshooted. I was so excited. It seemed pretty simple, and yeah, I've had surprises tonight too. So,
Well,
but I'm
sorry
so
about
glad
that.
you're here. I'm
Yes.
so glad you're here. So Erin, do you first want to share with you the people who are here, either watching live or who watch this at a later time, a little bit about your practice, Align Physical Therapy?
Yeah. So I'm a physical therapist and I've been practicing for about 8 years. I love what I do. I primarily do craniosacral therapy, which is a very gentle, hands-on approach that helps to reduce stress in the nervous system. So I focus a lot on people who have chronic issues that aren't going away, whether that's some type of pain issue, headaches, migraines, dizziness, stuff like that. So
Wonderful.
love
Thank you
it.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, and as I mentioned earlier when we were trying to get all the technology working, that Erin is based here in Western North Carolina with a practice that will be, well, at a new location here shortly in Brevard. But tonight we're here to hear about Erin's experience working with me over the course of a little bit more than a year now. Um, so Erin, if you want to share with people, like what brought you to me in the first place?
Well, it was a couple of things. In December of 2016, I ended up doing a small piece in the modern version of the Nutcracker, and the routine that we did resulted in a bunch of ribs being out on my right side and the back. And I had seen a couple chiropractors for that, and it helped over like the next couple months. And then in May of 2017, I sustained another dance injury where I basically slipped and fell, and I landed on my left sit bone, and I was in so much pain. I had a hard time like walking for 3 days, which is not like me at all. I couldn't run, I couldn't hike. I had a lot of tightness that went from my basically my left glute all the way down to my left Achilles tendon. And I was like, I've got to figure something out because this I cannot live with. So I kept looking, and I asked around, and your name came up because I guess we have a mutual friend, Julie Everhart. So she was like, check out Dr. Jenn. I was like, okay.
And what was your like impression after our first session?
I was super impressed. My expectations were exceeded by far. Being your ability to be able to tune into the body and figure out what we need to work on for that day. And I think your assessment was really thorough. So my expectations were far exceeded. I didn't really know what I was walking into. I was just like, I just hurt. I'm tired of hurting.
Right, right. Well, that is wonderful to hear. I mean, on some level, I feel like we've known each other for years at this point because so much has
Yeah.
transpired in that, year plus. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember that when you came in, that yes, what you were experiencing in your left side and that pain that you were in, what got you through the door, and what did you notice in some of those first initial visits? Yeah, what was showing up for you?
I was kind of surprised how much of the emotional stuff was coming up. Like, there would be a certain emotion that my body wanted to clear, whether that was, feeling abused or angry or whatever, left behind, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So that was not expected, but definitely appreciated. 'Cause I feel like that balances out the physical and the non-physical, whether that's emotional, spiritual, whatever.
Okay. Um, and so that way people can kind of picture what you went through, to get a sense. When we spoke at like the year mark,
Mm-hmm.
what stood out for you the most at that time, looking back at the year that we had worked together?
Mm-hmm. I think what stood out the most was my ability to check in with myself and feel confident following my own intuition and making my own decisions without being one, overwhelmed, two, not trusting myself, and three, um, just like not wanting to do it by myself. So that felt really good. And I also just like in my body felt softer. Like literally, I felt like I was in more alignment. And I don't think without having that contrast, I even really knew that when I first started.
Hmm. Well, I do remember, when we were talking about that, that so much had changed from when you first came in
Mm-hmm.
through the course of that year, that when we looked back at some of the conversations that we had those first few days, that there was almost a level of surprise, like, oh, right. I was experiencing like overwhelm, like every time I came in,
Yeah,
that, yeah, that there just seemed to be so much going on that, yeah, part of you didn't know where to begin, what to do next.
right.
Um, that seemed, yeah, that seemed almost surprising, just like what you had accomplished in the course of that year.
Yeah, I remember going through some of my goals, or maybe not the goals necessarily, but the issues. Like I don't remember having sleep problems, but that was apparently on the list. I was like, I don't even remember having a sleep problem because that's apparently way better now. So
Right. And how wonderful to realize, like, wow, I had more complaints, and it's been so long and it's been so good that I don't even remember that I had them.
yeah, was like, oh yeah, I
Um,
kind of maybe remember feeling like that, but I haven't felt like that in a long time.
Now, I know I'm asking you to think back, and I know a lot has changed in the amount of time that we've been doing this together. Um, did you have like any hesitations about committing to working with me, committing to, well, to yourself and taking things to that level when we first started?
Yeah, absolutely. One, of course, was the financial commitment, which looking back was actually a really good deal. And now it's like, of course, I would spend that much money on myself. Like, why wouldn't I do that? And the second thing was the time commitment. I'm like, what, a year? Like, as a PT, I work with people generally like 6 weeks, 12 weeks, something like that, and sometimes longer. But a year, I'm like, what on earth are we going to do for an entire year? And now looking, I'm on my second year, second quarter in the second year. I'm like, of course I would have worked for for at least a year. Because I mean, it took looking back, I think it took a solid 10 months for me to really feel like I wasn't going to backslide. Like I have absolutely made a permanent change and I'm not sliding back. Which I really think is relatively a fast amount of time. I mean, 10 months to go from overwhelm and crying and being in a toxic job and all that to feeling really excited and landing in my own business more. I mean, that's a huge jump. So I
Right,
definitely had
right.
some reservations, but I would say if anyone's feeling that way, trust yourself. And I have my own, way of tuning in. I don't use occipital draw, but as a cranial therapist, I just tune into my cranial rhythm. So if it goes off, that's a yes. If it stays on, it's a no. So I remember sitting there, like we're talking about like signing a contract, and I sat there and I got a yes, and I'm like, well, if you're getting a yes and I'm getting a yes, well then I guess I'm doing this.
Right, right. And I do remember you saying that yes, there were hesitations. Yes, you were thinking about the time and the money because it was really different than what your previous experiences, both as a PT, but also working with other chiropractors. Um,
Right.
that I was asking, you to show up in a very different way than what other healers had in the past. Um,
Right.
what would you, how do I want to ask this? Um, if you could go back and do it differently, would you?
No. I mean, unless I could have found you sooner, yes. That's the only thing I would have changed, somehow finding you sooner.
I love that. I love that. Because to me, I mean, that's always a question that, a way to make things really clear. Like, sometimes you have a conversation with somebody and they're like, oh, yeah, that was good. And to me, to make it really clear, it's like, would you go back and do it differently? And if they say, oh, no, then I know. Like, that just really
Hmm.
solidifies it for me. So thank you for sharing that because that is, well, one, it feels good to hear, obviously, but two, yeah, I think it just makes it crystal clear because how often do we hear people say, oh, yeah, I would do it differently if I could go back?
Right.
Um, so I know we've had some people come on and come off. If you watch this either live or at some point later on that you watch the recording, if you have questions for me or for Erin, feel free to share them with us. We will follow up, whether it's during the course of our live conversation, or we can follow up as they come through at a later time. It's one of the reasons for us doing this tonight. Both of us being healers, we want people to have access to healing. We want people to feel comfortable, um, especially if you haven't done a form of healing before. We want to open that door, open that possibility for you connecting to a healer that you trust. And here you have the opportunity this evening to talk to two of us, who that's what we do. So feel free to ask questions, make comments. If you want to know more, absolutely reach out to one or both of us, either tonight or um, when you watch it in the future. Um, all right. So um, there was Hey Danielle, thank you for joining us. I'm so glad that you were here. And like I said, if you have questions or comments later, let us know because we'd be glad to answer them for sure. Um, okay. So, Erin, how has, like, I mean, you said yes, permanent change. Now, is that permanent change that you experienced where you like wouldn't be backsliding? Because I know that that's one of the reasons that I ask people to commit to a length of time, typically
Hmm.
not less than 6 months. Um, Most people do commit to a year. And the reason for me doing that was I recognize that those people who were committed, who did show up, who did follow through, and who did it for an extended period of time, not only had permanent change versus what I had seen with others, where yes, the pain or discomfort, loss of function would get better for a period of time, and then it would start kind of creeping back in, or you'd overdo it in some way, and then the pain or injury or whatever was going on originally was back, and sometimes worse. Um, and I hated to see that roller coaster that people would get on. Um, and I wanted to, yeah, work with people who really wanted to experience that change, sustainable change. But what I also noticed with those people were the fact that it wasn't just physical change that they experienced. It
Hmm.
was the emotional change, the mental change, the spiritual change that what you talked about with like the confidence, with trusting your intuition, with having more clarity, that you made some really big changes and made some really big decisions for yourself in the past year.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess my question is, how did the work that we do help you like make those big changes or to feel more confident um, in yourself and the decisions you were making?
I feel like there's a couple of reasons. One was definitely like the physical aspect, just simply having my nervous system more regulated, um, and being able
Okay.
to get clear because my nervous system was calmer. Because of course we all know, like if we're rushed and worried and anxious all the time, it's really hard to get clear and make decisions from that place. So that was one, just having just feeling clear in my body. Then also having your support, being able to come in with questions, tune into the body. What does my body want? Do we address this now? Yes or no? Sometimes that question would come up at a later time. So I think just constantly showing up and having someone who's further along in their journey was absolutely essential.
Wonderful. Um, and how do you think that that's, or how has it impacted like the work that you do?
Well, I definitely feel more full. So when I show up, I'm showing up as, already filled versus depleted, which is definitely where I was at when I first started working with you. So that has helped. And then kind of back to the modeling, like being able to like kind of watch you, like how you streamline, like how you ask your questions, um, and just being able to watch a healer who's very grounded, which I really appreciate because not
Mhm.
everybody is super grounded. So really having someone to come back to you on a regular basis who's a really good model has helped me kind of tweak things and how I do things with my own business, as well as it's offered like another, I guess, line of insight compared to like me just trying to do it all by myself.
Oh, wonderful. And now for others who, you mentioned being able to check in, you mentioned um, developing, well, the way I describe it, developing a relationship with your intuition, where
Hmm.
not only did you feel comfortable asking yourself and checking in, but trusting the response that you got.
Hmm.
Um, how do you think the work like helped you do that? Do you have thoughts about that?
Um, I think a lot of it honestly was practice because I had so much coming up and I was like asking and asking and asking. It's just like I got really good at it because
Huh?
I was always coming in with a question or maybe a list of like 10 questions. And so I just think the constant needing to practice that was really helpful. Then, of course, having you say, "Yep, your intuition's right. You probably don't even really need to ask me." I'm like, "Yeah, I thought so."
Right.
I should because I already know the answer.
Right, right. I know when I've worked with other professionals and professionals, like you said, who maybe are further along on the path or have a skill that I have not yet fully developed or tapped into or maybe trust yet, that part of it too is having that dedicated time to know that you can ask those questions. You know that
Mhm.
you can bring those questions. Um, do you think that that had an impact as far as, us working together for the time period that we have?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's kind of like the core part of the work, at least at this point. It's kind of gone from, I came in because of pain and all this, and now it's more like, okay, what direction do I want to take with my business? Or, what do I want to do with my living situation? It's really more based on that
Mhm.
now.
So do you think, with the amount of time that we've committed to working together, that it has allowed you to move from focusing, like for instance, on physical pain to looking at like your life in more expansive ways?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times that gets brought up by my essence, my being, and I'm like, I hadn't really thought about that. Um, so yes, whether I'm bringing that question in or it just kind of comes up, it definitely I'm getting pushed in that direction. And I think to an extent, I've always been at least somewhat like self-aware, and I've always been one to like want to like be on some sort of spiritual journey. But this has definitely helped me really like land in that and figure out how to navigate it. So I think that's essential, especially because, like you said, we have been working for quite a bit of time together. So I think developing that relationship and then just that history to be able to see, okay, we've gone from here, and then we kind of went through this phase. Now we're going through this phase. Um, I think that's been really helpful.
Right. And I do agree that you had the intuitive ability when you walked in the door, right at the first time. And yeah, we're able, as a result of the time and the work that we've done together, develop that relationship. And of course, this is when I want everybody to know everybody has these abilities. Everybody has the ability to tap into their intuition, to check in with themselves, to know or receive information that your body wants to share with you. If you haven't seen some of my other live streams or know about my work, Erin's talking about my ability to check in with her body and her body sharing information with us. It's not necessarily something that she brings in. And what she's referring to is I do use my intuition. I do use, at this point, I would say psychic ability to receive information that comes directly from Erin. That, would you say, Erin, that sometimes I'll come out with something and you're like, yes, oh, right, that makes so much sense, or it brings like a level of clarity that, yeah, that you wouldn't have thought of, at least not right then.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel like I kind of get to the point where like I can't hide anything. Not that I want to hide anything, but either my body's gonna bring it up or you're gonna pick up on it one way or another. So there's really no like, appearing, showing up halfway or anything like that. Not that I would want to, but
Right, right. I mean, because you wouldn't have committed to the amount of time that you did and stick with it, and you certainly wouldn't have made a second commitment if you weren't getting a lot out of both the time and the money that you've put into it.
right.
Um, okay. There was something else that came up. Um, oh, one of the things that I did want to say, if somebody's watching this and they're going like, "Whoa, I'm not gonna be able to hide anything from Dr. Jenn," maybe I don't want her to know things, or maybe I'm not ready to say something, or what if something really like freaky and scary and that would be embarrassing would come out. Would you say, Erin, has at any point that something came out or something that came up that you didn't bring in yourself, was it anything that on some level you weren't ready for, or on some level that you realized ended up being like perfect timing?
Yeah, I feel like it's always perfect timing, and I don't feel like if something comes up that I'm not ready for it, which is why I feel like it comes up in the first place. And I don't feel like even when I bring in something that I'm, like sad about or mad about, I don't ever feel like I'm going to be judged. I feel like you do like a really good job of just maintaining like your ground and being like objective but also caring at the same time. I feel like that's really hard to find because sometimes people like try to like their heart energy like comes out of their chest and they're like in your face with their heart energy, which is a lot of times good intention, but being able to like stay like within your own being, I feel like is quite a gift that you have.
Well,
So
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Um, what I'm almost like hearing and seeing right now is I know one of the things that um, in the amount of time that we've worked together, there were times that you would come in and like the overwhelm might be kind of creeping up. And I'd stop and go, wait a minute. Like, do you remember where you were, like however many months ago? And when was the last time that you felt overwhelmed?
Hmm.
And you'd stop and you'd go, oh, wow, it's been like a long time. Or yeah, that there would be times that I would mirror to you or share with you just the level of progress or, yeah, how much had changed and how you were showing up differently and in a way that was like more confident, more expansive, more grounded, more connected. Um, that I feel like in hearing you talk tonight, the reason I'm saying this, in hearing you talk tonight and describe me, because of course sessions are about you, um, when you're coming to the office, to hear you describe me, I'm like, whoa, like that's pretty damn good. That I don't always recognize how much things have changed, or yeah, that as much as you know that some of the work that we do is just recognizing like that we're valued because we are, that we are enough because we are, that we
Mhm.
belong because we are, that we're not always great at recognizing like all our gifts.
Mhm.
So I know I felt like for me, I mean, like even just hearing you, because obviously we have developed a relationship, um, yeah, that you just pointed out some of my gifts that um, I didn't recognize or I brushed off maybe. Um, yeah, that we tend to be good at that, not realizing yeah, all our gifts. Does that make
Yeah, and I think
sense?
that's really important. I wanted to mention that because I'm a very sensitive person, so I'm really picky about who I have work with me, and I think that's really good for other people to know for sure. Like not just like what
Yeah.
my changes have been, but like why have I been able to change that much?
Oh, that's a good point. I often say we can't get out of our own way. That I know, I mean, I work with healers, I work with professionals, even though I can, yeah, do this level of work, um, we can't always do it for ourselves. Um, I mean, certainly one of the reasons why I'm so glad that you're on here is because I want to share with people how important it is that, and let me know if you agree with this, how important it is that the healers that they go to do their own healing,
Mm-hmm.
that they're doing, like they're taking care of themselves, they're doing the work for themselves, that that they are working with a professional on some level. I think it's so important because I know I show up as, how do I would put this? I show up more grounded, more connected, more aware. Um, so what my best is, like, can achieve a new level when I'm working with somebody else. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's essential. One, because you know that your healer professional person is taking care of themselves, and two, that I don't feel like we ever get to a point we just stop. Like I just feel like we constantly are in a state of growth. Whether we're like accelerating through growth or not, there's constantly um, something else to grow into, and I feel like if practitioners aren't doing that, they can become stagnant,
Hmm.
and then I think that can probably inhibit um, the healing capacity on both ends.
I agree. I agree. Um, that is definitely um, one of the things that I want to know when I choose a healer. Like, what are they doing to take care of themselves? Um, now, one of the questions that I want to ask that might seem a little strange to some of the people who are either watching this or watch it later, um, through the course of, yeah, this work that you've been doing for yourself and the time that we've spent doing this work, have you developed a like a deeper relationship with yourself? Would you say that you love yourself more? Um, and If you do, why is that? Why do you think that's important?
Yes, absolutely. I have deepened further into my own self-love. I think I probably couldn't even have said that out loud. If you'd asked me this a year ago, I probably would have like thrown myself on the floor and started crying. Oh, so I know we're both laughing, so we're like, yeah, there probably would have been a moment like that.
Uh-huh.
But yes, and I think going back to just feeling so much clearer and being able to show up for myself and just continue to do the work and be like, okay, well, how do I show myself that I love myself? Which
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm like deepening into. It's like, well, do I love myself? Yes. I may not have said that a year or two ago, because I'm not even sure what that even like means.
Right.
But yeah, but now I'm able to listen and tune in and be like, okay, well, what do I need? And it's not always what I used to think I need. Like, I need to exercise this much in a week, or, it's not necessarily, it doesn't look like that. It's, am I going to treat myself nicely? Am I going to talk to myself nicely? Am I going to, you know, cut myself some slack and, not try so hard, which is usually the problem.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I've been able to develop just like a short like morning and evening ritual where I like burn Palo Santo and I just ask for help and I say thank you, and I just have been able to like give myself some more time um, just for me. So yeah, that's definitely improved a huge amount over the past year or so.
Nice. I know that that's one of the things that I've noticed because, of course, the work that I do with you, I do with myself pretty much every day and sometimes numerous times a day, depending on what's going on around us. And that's one of the things I noticed was that, yeah, the way I felt about myself
Mm-hmm.
became more loving, nice, that in the past, very judgmental, very critical,
Mm-hmm.
so hard on myself, and sometimes downright mean. Um, what would you say that, or would you say that loving yourself, having this relationship with yourself, how does that kind of show up in your world around you?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was closing the door. My roommate came in. Sorry, say it one
Oh,
more time.
no, you're fine. That relationship that you're developing, that you've been developing with yourself, that deeper love, and being able to even say that you love yourself, how has that been mirrored or showed up in your world around you?
Well, I feel like I've been able to land into more of what I want and what I feel passionate about. For example, with my own business, I went from working a burnout job where I was literally working in a toxic environment every day and upset and depressed and anxious. And
Mhm.
then come the first of the year, I was able to find a part-time job where I can still do what I do as a craniosacral therapist and land a little bit more with my own business. And part of that was doing what I love. So not just loving me, but okay, well, what do I love to do? Like, how do I express my own love? And that's generally through movement or dance or something. So I was
Mhm.
able to do a series this past June for people exploring movement, like how do we move if we're moving from our muscles versus our fascia versus our whatever cerebrospinal fluid. So just really being able to like love what I'm doing, that is definitely how that has showed up, which is definitely not something I ever would have guessed like this time last year.
Well, and that's, if people are watching this and wondering why, like I keep grinning and shaking my head, because of course well, I feel very grateful and I feel like this is so Southern, blessed, to be a part of a journey with you and people like yourself who are committing to 6 months or a year or more, because I get to be a part and witness and observe like all of these really awesome changes, from the overwhelm, from not knowing what to do, to saying like, oh yes, this toxic job is, not good for me, but what else do I do? I mean, how many people do we know, or have known, that stay in jobs that is like sucking the life right out of them?
Yeah.
And you got to a point in your health, in your healing, in how you, yeah, had this relationship with yourself that you could say, you know what? I'm not doing that to myself anymore. Um,
Yeah.
and then to go on and not even just continue to expand your business, but to expand it where you're saying, like, I'm doing things that I love in my business. And that's
Hmm.
important. And if you're loving it, you know that the people who are receiving the care, they're going to recognize that on some level.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, so, well, thank you for being able to say that, yes, you love yourself in a way now that you wouldn't even have really been able to understand a year or so ago.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's so important, especially with everything that's going on in our communities, in our society at this point. Um, I think if more of us could show up in a way that's more loving to ourselves, we'd start seeing that show up more in our communities, in um, our politics. I'll put that one word out there, real quick, but that it would show up in other ways as well.
Hmm.
Um, so, is there anything else, Erin, that I have not asked you about, or um, yeah, that I haven't asked you about that you think that someone who's considering healing work, with me certainly, um, would want to know?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate how important it is with making the commitment and sticking with it. Because I think like true healing does take time. It's not going to be, hey, come in for 3 sessions and I hope you feel better. It's going to be, it really is a journey. And to keep showing up and to keep showing up and just continue to do the work and just trust that it will work. Even if, you know, something big like a job is kind of like dragging you down or whatever the case may be. Because if I hadn't kept at it, I wouldn't be as happy and joyful and loving as I am
Hmm.
today. It just
Yeah,
keep, just keep doing the work and just keep showing up um, for your own sake. So that's what I would have to say. Um, and then one kind of more like technical thing, I guess, would be um, that, since you offer remote sessions, just I would like to say that those are just as powerful and just as potent as an in-person session. So if anybody's kind of like, oh, I don't know about that, I would say go for it. And for me, not having to drive 35 minutes into Asheville and then back, if I can just like be at home, do a session, and then keep going on with my day, that's actually like really helpful. So more
wonderful, wonderful.
self-love, just being able to like limit my time I'm commuting to Asheville because the remote sessions are just as powerful. I definitely don't feel like there's anything missing by not being in person.
Thank you. And there was something that you said, with the ups and downs of the year, of like the toxic job, of, yes, so many changes that you went through. Um, did you feel supported in that process?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I feel like
Um,
if there was one place I felt supported, it was with you. It was like, doesn't matter what I show up with, I know I have support during this 20 minutes or whatever. So,
okay,
yeah, absolutely.
wonderful. Um, I know that's certainly, I know one of the things that is my intention that, yeah, healing is a roller coaster. Our life, our journey is a roller coaster. And that I think sometimes I know if looking back at my own stuff, why I didn't continue is because, yeah, when it got rough, I kind of felt alone. Um,
Hmm.
and so I feel like it's so important to have that commitment, but have that support too. So that way, um, because you and I both know, like, what happens after the breakdown, after, you kind of feel like, oh, here we go again, or like this stinks. Um, what would you tell people happens on the other side of that? Yeah, this doesn't feel good today, or even for a couple of days. What happens on that other side?
I would say yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and even though it's crappy when you're going through it, it's coming up for a reason and usually to be cleared. So yeah, it doesn't feel good, but it doesn't last. And it's just, like I said, just keep plugging away. So
Thank you. I found myself right there wanting to share my own experience, but of course, this whole idea of this live is that I ask you so people can hear from somebody other than myself. But thank you so much, Erin, for sharing all these things that you have tonight. This is fantastic. Um, if people want to get in contact with you, if people want to talk to you um, about the work that you do, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
they can find me on Facebook and private message me. And then if they want to have a conversation further, I can definitely, reach out with my phone number. We can have a conversation on the phone if that's easier. I go by Erin Christine on Facebook. I just didn't use my last name, or they can find me with my business page, which is Align Physical Therapy. So either one of those would work. And I wanted to share one more thing just to clarify. Um,
Absolutely.
when I was saying that I, could tell like after about month 10 that I wasn't gonna like backslide or anything, that doesn't mean that I didn't feel any change whatsoever until month 10. I could just tell I had made so much progress that I wasn't going to turn back into like the overwhelm and the anxiety and the depression. I could definitely feel huge differences like pretty much every single session, whether it was my digestion or my flexibility or my reaction time with like mountain biking. Like there were definitely some significant changes like all along the way, like starting from the first session. So I definitely wanted to clarify that.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much because yeah, I can imagine some people going, well, 10 months.
Yeah,
If I'm going to have to experience pain and discomfort and all of these other things for 10 months, yeah, I'm not waiting that long.
right.
Especially when so much out there is, oh, you can get immediate relief or immediate response. So thank you so much for clarifying that because that is, yeah, a very key point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yes, and thank you again for joining me tonight, especially through the technical difficulties at the beginning. I know I've learned something and hopefully have less of those in the future, but hey, this is a sign too for me that healing has come a long way, because at some point in my past, those technical difficulties at the start would have had me so stressed,
Mhm.
so upset, so tense, that I would have like kind of been knocked off my game. Yeah, I might have, who knows what would have happened. But yeah, it didn't go with the flow. And I find it much easier to do that when we're taking care of ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, so thank you again for joining us. And as Erin said, reach out on Facebook to her personally or to Align Physical Therapy, um, either on Facebook or her website, and she will get back to you. All right. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Erin, and have a great night.
Thank you. You too. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Now, I am going to just wrap up. Let's see. Okay. Just wrap up myself. As you heard, Erin shared a lot. So thankful, so grateful for I know the time that we've been working together and for her willingness to show up tonight and share those experiences and those details with us. If you have further questions, if there was something that you want to know more about, definitely leave comments. It's to her, to me. Um, and for those who want to know more about what I do and what that looks like, whether you're local in Western North Carolina or I can work with you. Um, I'm working with people right now in, oh, I don't even know how many states. I've lost count at this point, the people that I'm working with. So if that's something that you're interested in, there's a few options. You can send me a direct message, and I will post this in the comments below for a discovery session, which is time devoted to you. We'll get on the phone or a Zoom call, and you'll have clarity by the end of that call of whether or not working with me is in your highest and best interest. So, discovery session, absolutely valuable. I mean, imagine having clarity. Wonderful. I also have some events coming up the last week in October. I think this 22nd and 23rd. I have some group healing sessions, which would be a way, grab a friend and join a session. I can either do it remote. So again, if you live in another part of the country, you can join, or if you are local here to Western North Carolina, it'll be at my office. And then I'll be doing Facebook lives on Wednesdays and Sundays. So the next one's going to be Sunday. And yeah, so reach out, ask questions, and well, connect. Let me see, is there anything else? I was thinking there was something else. Maybe not. All right. Well, it was wonderful talking to you all tonight. I look forward to connecting with you in the future. I'm sending love and health and transformation to you until we connect again. Have a good night. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Next Wednesday, Sunday night is love yourself to health and wealth, tips, tools, and stories about that. That's Sunday night. Next Wednesday, I'll be speaking with Dr. Deborah Barnett, and she will be sharing her experience with synergy activation, working with me on that call. So you'll be able to, she's a licensed therapist, and she will be joining me next week, and we will be discussing the benefits that she's received. I knew there was something else I wanted to say. So anyway, that's next Wednesday, same time. So sending love, health, and transformation to you until we connect again. Talk to you then. Bye.